touchy subject today. People are biased by their personal experience. You know how you hear people say all the time, well, you should see it from their perspective. That's what I'm referring to, right? It's actually a a much sillier thing to say than people realize, right? To suppose that we can get genuine knowledge of the whole from some person's particular experience, right? Now, don't get me wrong. Personal experience is valuable to your therapist, right? I love learning people's stories and seeing things from different perspectives, right? But what I do is I collect these perspectives and I have them fight with each other in conversation, and I rely on the prevailing views, the ones that make most sense in speech, right? That's what dialectic is. That's what philosophy is. You can think of Plato's cave. So, personal experience, it's valuable. It's interesting. I'm down to listen to it, but it's quite possible that your personal experience, or any given person's personal experience, is not representative of the whole, right, of the whole situation. So, an example that I like to give, it's like, let's say, I live in San Diego, and let's say that I wanted to know how many people are confined to wheelchairs in San Diego, right? So I decide that, I'm going to spend 2 weeks keeping track of everyone I see, whether or not they are in a wheelchair, right? Now, I don't drive right now, right? I take the bus, and people who are confined to wheelchairs are more likely than other people to take the bus, right? So if I rely on my personal experience to determine how many people in San Diego use wheelchairs, then I am going to overestimate the number, right? This is broadly applicable to epistemology, or to knowledge, right? If we just rely on what's around us, that's just stuff that is shown up, right? There really is no good reason to just assume that that is typical of the whole. And this is why surveys use random samples. Right? You've heard of scientific surveys and non-scientific surveys. That's the difference. The scientific ones account for this bias that I'm talking about. Right? When these people rely on personal experience like this, it's as scientific as an online poll showing that Donald Trump won a presidential debate, right? Like I'm saying, it only includes people that show up, right? Like personal experience. And we all know that Trump never really won a debate, okay? We all know that. But he won the online polls. And of course, that was good enough for him, but this bias is called voluntary response bias. That's the fancy name for it, right? Voluntary response, meaning that it's bias that's introduced by people naturally showing up, right? It's just showing up by personal experience, right? And like I said, it's broadly applicable to knowledge, right? And it applies to your sacred cows no matter how much you want it not to. Okay? So, some people are really stubborn about the transcendent value of personal experience, right? Like there's something sacred and hallowed about, well, you should see it from their point of view, right? And, it's like, what? People are biased by their personal experience? I actually had a jackass say to me one time when I was telling him about this. I said to him, what if people are biased by their personal experience? And he said to me, well, has that ever happened? And I wasn't quick enough, to say this then, but I said, well, you obviously think that I'm biased by my personal experience, because he disagreed with me. So what's the solution? It's like I said, conversation, right? In philosophy, we call it dialectic, right? We collect the different views, and we have them fight each other out in conversation, and we rely on the ones that make the most sense. Okay, that's how we have to deal with these things. So I'm going to make this personal here. I'm going to tell a personal story about that same jackass, my jackass ex-boss. Used to work for him. And don't get me wrong, he was a great man, Right? He was at a music studio, great musician. He's sort of an archetype of a great musician, right? So he was just he was the jackass in his and my relationship. Right? That's the way that I would put it. And he has epistemological problems. He has this epistemological problem that I'm discussing, right? Now, I don't want to reveal his identity, so I've come up with a pseudonym for him, right? Butt Rapers, that's how I'm going to refer to him. So, and he's one of these people that Aristotle warned us about. Aristotle warned us that there are people that conclude from being good at one thing that they are good at everything. Right? This is very related to the personal experience bias. Because Butt Rapers, what he would do is conclude from the fact that he was so good at playing piano, and he was, and from the fact that he ran a business, and, you know, I didn't. I'm just, you know, the starving artist philosopher type who is a complete mooch, right? You know, think of Socrates, if I want to flatter myself. And so he would conclude from that his views about everything in life were correct and mine were wrong to the extent that they disagreed with his. Right? He would say to me, well, Derek, I'm better at playing piano than you are, right? I run a business. I grew up in Ohio and went to high school in Ohio. He would actually say that to me, right? Because the main subject that we disagreed about was we're getting there, we're going to do it. Black people, right? Now, I love black people, right? I'm a huge fan. But, you know, when I think of something that I love, when I think of people that I love and friends, I want to be friends in the best sense, right? I want to have friends in the best sense. I want to be a friend in the best sense. And a friend in that sense would be honest with you about your problems, if you have problems, right? So, you know, you hear people say, oh, we need to have an honest talk on race. It's like, yeah, we do. But I just want, you know, my honest talk on race is a little bit more honest than, well, you know, somewhat quite a lot more honest than what you would typically get. Nonetheless, I love black people. And, you know, I don't have, like, sinister views. I basically have Heather McDonald's views about it, right? She's a very popular commentator, although she has become controversial. The left has taken notice of her, whatever that college was, she wasn't allowed to speak. And the way that she puts it is that it's actually the cops that believe that hashtag Black Lives Matter, right? And then all these other people are just running around lying to themselves. It's totally a tragedy, right? But like she says, it's the cops that believe that Black Lives Matter, right? Now, I put it in a way that's a little bit more provocative, granted. But nonetheless, you know, it's not sinister. What I say is that, well, you know, my boss, Butt Rapers, what he would say is that the biggest problem that black people have is white people and the cops and white supremacy, right? Because he went to high school in Ohio and he knows from personal experience, right? And so what I say is that, well, actually, you know, I'm pretty sure that the biggest problem that black people have is other black people, right? I've read about this widely. I know how to discuss it. Right? I clean up in debates, okay? Like, it's one of my issues because I feel so bad about it. It's a big deal, right? Like, people are pissed off about the black question, and so we need to have a discussion, right? And that's one of my goals in life, is to have this honest talk on race. And so, let's see here. I've covered pretty much all of this. So one time, you know, among other things, what I said was that, well, because someone said to me, well, Derek, you know, you should see it from their perspective, right, about black people. And then I said, well, you know, I think black people should see it from other people's perspective. And you know, Butt was there, and he said, well, you know, why don't you just stop talking? Right? Stormed out, sent a bunch of angry text messages to me, and he was never able to forgive me. He could never forgive me. Although, but, you know, if you ever see this, you can feel free to apologize to me at any time, right? Because, you know, you had these epistemological problems. And so sometime later, well, anyway, the point is that I have Heather McDonald's views about Black people, right? She has a gratuitous experience with Black people. It's what she devotes her career to dealing with, right? And then Butt Rapers over here is like, well, I went to high school in Ohio. It's like, there's Heather McDonald over there. Like, what is he going to say to Heather McDonald? Well, I, you know, am better at playing piano than you, and I am, you know, I run my own business, and I went to high school in Ohio. Is he going to say that to Heather McDonald? And then shortly after Butt fired me, a few months later, I made a new friend, my new best friend. She lives in St. Louis, and she agrees with me about Black people, and she pretty much has ultimate, you know, authentic experience with Black people. But she agrees with me, right? So Butt isn't going to say to her, oh, but I went to high school in Ohio, right? Because she would say, well, I went to high school in St. Louis, right? So it's ad hominem, right? Personal experience is ad hominem because you're making your argument rely on the identity of a person, right? It doesn't suffice to say to me, well, Derek, you went to a you know, a Filipino high school in San Diego. It doesn't suffice to say that because I'm not the only one that makes this argument. So it's ad hominem. And so yeah, this you know, conflict between my boss and I, between Butt and I, is really classic. And I really hope that I can introduce it to people so that they can really think this over, right? Maybe I'm wrong, but I am pretty sure that, you know, even if I'm wrong about Black people, the point is that it should be able to be explained to me, right, in speech. And, you know, it shouldn't rely on ad hominem arguments like I'm saying, like, oh, I went to high school in Ohio and you didn't. But it's very difficult to explain this to me because I'm, you know, I'm just gratuitously familiar with the issue. And this classic debate between Butt and I reveals why we can't rely on personal experience for genuine knowledge, right? It reveals why what I call personal experience uber alles is anti-science, right? It's a stupid view that can be held by smart people, right? Personal experience is valuable to your therapist, right? This reveals why dialectic or conversation is uber alles, right? We could make a better world if we would rely more on conversation and less on personal experience. Right? Personal experience uber alles is one of the main things that's contributing to all of the hostility in our society. You know, we got both sides, and they're like, well, I got my personal experience, and I got my personal experience, right? That's what's going on here, and what we need to do is have a conversation, right? And we need to tell people, to check their personal experience, all right? Gosh.